Welcome everyone to the room where we will discuss the deployment of solar in residential and commercial sectors. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Egan from the Environmental Finance Center at the University of Maryland. I'm the facilitator, and we have Deb Perry from Cadmus. She is the expert that you just heard go through all of this amazing work that's been going on. And then we have SJ Fernandez, and she will be assisting, taking notes and listening in, because these breakout rooms are really about listening to you, the community, the residents and business owners of Prince George's, and to get the feedback and thoughts that you have, either again as a subject matter expert or someone who's just interested in these types of solutions. So like I mentioned, if you could see, if you can put in the chat the reason that you joined the room, so we can have a sense of, who's in this room and your interest in solar. Okay, we're at 18 participants now. So if you want to advance to the next slide, SJ, we'll just recap basically what was reviewed. A lot has gone on in Prince George's County. And Deb, I don't know if you want to take this slide, sort of recap again for people.
I think folks have heard me probably enough, and I definitely want to leave space for everyone else. But yeah, there is a lot that has been going on in terms of solar and renewable energy, and the county does lead in the region. So there's a lot of good foundation to grow from.
Great, yeah, and the incentives are really important too. And one of the pieces is how do we facilitate people understanding what incentives are out there, and then there may be an expansion of different types of funding and financing, like the PACE. So if we go to the next slide, SJ, these are the steps to get to that 60,000 solar installations by 2030. One of the important parts is to track what's already going on, which the county is doing. They're tracking how many installations there are, as you saw, 20,000. So how do we get there? And that's where we're going to start asking you to share your thoughts about these different steps. The task force, expand education and outreach, participate in a national Solar Smart program, and expand participation in the financing piece. So I'll just let you look at that for a minute and think through, because again, we want you to tell us your thoughts about how to get to the goals, and what you think about these steps as well. So this is thinking about how do we maximize the success of the blueprint. Oh, go ahead, Deb. Did you have?
Oh, I'm not always sure when the chat is specific to this group versus the big
I was learning
group.
Yeah.
But I do want to note, I've seen community solar pop up quite a lot, and that is definitely an important strategy. There is a lot of community solar currently being proposed for Prince George's County, and so it did fall out a bit as a priority recommendation, only because there's so much happening in terms of just the market forces already. Whereas so that feels like it's on a pretty good track. Not to say that there can probably be more to do, but there's a lot going on with community solar that doesn't necessarily need an extra push. Mm-hmm. I think the residential and commercial markets were flagged as an area that maybe need something extra to really scale up or to keep growing. I'll also say I saw some comments about more solar canopies. I think that's a great idea. Would love to hear more ideas about what needed to make that happen. And then I also saw a comment about making sure that we have solar deployment in equitable ways, including in communities that are likely to be hard hit by climate change. And again, would really invite, would love to hear specific ideas. Is that about education? Is that about financing? Is that about overcoming how we get solar on rental properties or other housing types? Would love to hear specific ideas about how we can crack some of those markets that are hard to get to.
Yeah, and I think at this point, SJ, if you want to advance to the next slide, and then we can start recording and we can start hearing from who's in the room. We have 19 participants. So the this is kind of, at this point, I would say just chime in and start the conversation. I see some people want to install solar panels. If you are willing to talk about that process, that, how has it been in your experience? What more information do you need? If you have solar panels, how was that process?
Hello, can you hear me?
Vernon?
Yeah, how
Yes.
are you?
Yeah.
Okay, as a member of the previous task force, I believe this was in sometime in 2014. I think it goes back that far. I think that was when the original solar task force was started. Got any recollection of that?
I was going to say, I'm not sure. And Deb's shaking her head. I said, if Deb doesn't know.
Before my time. Tell me more.
Well, we had a task force, solar task force in 2014 that oversaw the actual implementation of solar panels. I would say distribution or network pricing, the whole nine, kind of broke down some barriers so that people, pretty much, I guess, if for lack of a better word, regulated it, so that there was an actual system of where across the board where everybody played on an even playing field, but was able to market to the communities pretty much their product, but pretty much set at a regulated type of pricing and so forth and so on. Are you guys familiar with that?
Would that be like a predecessor to the solar co-ops?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's been a very successful model for sure.
Now, but some of the feedback that I've gotten since I was on that committee and actually was an advocate for proposing for solar within the community, some of the issues that I have or feedback that I've gotten was the actual results from that actual implementation of solar within the community, Prince George's County, that particular plan. Are there any measurables that we can take away to tell us how to do it better this time versus before?
I think I'll need to talk to the county about that experience. It is the first time I'm hearing about it. So yeah, I'm not sure. Hopefully someone documented something somewhere.
What were lessons learned? So that could be our first bullet point for understanding if there were hurdles previously. How did they address the hurdles? Does that kind of capture it?
Well, yeah, exactly. It was a very successful program. The only issue that I think we weren't able to pretty much figure out how much would it be carbon reduction was captured from the installation of these panels.
Okay.
How effective the installation process, how effective it was. I hear from a lot of P folks that participated, and they felt like the value proposition was just not what was promised.
And when you say value, is that what type of, you mean for reductions, or is home value, or what?
Well, it just speaks to the education part that you were talking about. The education. I think that, when I talk to folks and try to educate them on how to properly install panels and how to get to be as efficient and most effective, they didn't know that information. They were just sold a product.
Okay. So how to select the product, you're even saying? It's
because the technology has changed so much from then to now. And so you found that a lot of people got outdated technology on their roofs right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was almost a wasted investment.
I will say, in the last community meeting, a common theme was people feeling they weren't sure who to trust for information. And I think there are some folks maybe doing door-to-door sales or I don't know, email spam and things like that, trying to sell solar. It
it was even more of even your major big manufacturers. Okay, yeah, you're right when you talk about the door to door. I mean that we didn't really calculate so that right now we could actually know based on what was implemented, what was installed, what did we do, what were the,
Right.
what were the
Gotcha. They're tracking over time.
Yeah, well, and interestingly, in the blueprint, that's the first step that we don't necessarily see in those 4 steps. That, you know, the one that begins that we just had on the slide that says establish a solar task force. But one of the steps is to establish tracking. I mean, there is tracking going on. We know there's 20,000. So you're saying just make sure to go above and beyond just knowing the number of, knowing maybe how many are out of date or how many, you know, the efficiency of what went in. So maybe add to the data and what they are going to track. That's part of it. David?
Jennifer, I was gonna say we have some other folks.
Yeah. I
some of these folks have panels on their roofs that are not even they're not efficient. They're just on folks' roofs.
I hear you. Okay, we're going to, David is thank you for raising, because I'm like, I don't know, that I think that works. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Deborah and Jennifer this question, or make a couple of comments quickly. I live in University Park, and I've been involved in 3 community solar projects, 2 here in Prince George's County and 1 up in Baltimore. So I've been involved in it for a while. I guess I agree with the previous previous person who was talking about education. And I think it would be really important to have somebody in the county who might be able to help people through the process, answer questions. It can be very confusing for someone who hasn't done it before, and to have someone who could actually help people, I think would really be important. I think having some incentives too, because there's a cost involved, and not everybody really can afford solar. The third thing is the roofing issues, because all roofs are not equal, and people have to think about what's going to happen 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. Is their roof a good roof right now? Have they just got a roof replaced, and maybe this is the time to put solar? I think those are things that we all have to discuss. The last thing, and this is actually, to me, really important, and it's less about roof solar. I think we need to get Pepco involved. They have tens of miles of right-of-ways running through the county, generally about 200 feet wide and literally running for miles. There could be hundreds of megawatts put on in these areas. And the utilities generally say, well, we need to keep these free because we have to access our lines. They come up with a number of reasons, but it can be done. And I think we got to move from the 20th century to the 21st century and really get our utilities involved, because here's an opportunity to really do solar fairly close to our metro area, not to have to necessarily bring it all the way in from the ocean, the wind turbines, but we could have solar electricity much closer. And I think that's something we really need to do. And I will stop now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Lisa, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, yes. I do wonder, for consideration, we're not going to answer it now, but as we begin to ramp up in one form or another, solar, well, if we do go the route of solar, a community solar, making sure that we, making sure that we balance like the destruction essentially of the trees, like the tree issue, because we're going to need huge tracts of land to have these sort of solar farms, if you will. So figuring out how to balance that and how much, like what's that ratio going to be if we're trying to keep like that 55% threshold of green. I think I saw that number in one of the previous slides. So that being a calculation at the start of this, like we don't want to exacerbate an issue we're trying to solve already, in trying to solve another problem. So I think that's one of the things. The other thing is I started the process my husband and I, we bought our house for the first time, and our first house, excuse me, and we wanted to do solar immediately. And one of the things I found, which was touched on already, is you absolutely don't know who to trust. Like, everybody comes, like they send the most trained people to convince you that they are the best, and they all make it sound like it's great, but it's going to cost you so much money up front, and it's very easy for that technology becomes dated very quickly. You're stuck with a issue if they mess up your roof. There are so many things that you just have no protection over. And at the end of the day, this stuff is for profit. So I'm curious how much of this essentially can be taken over by municipal governments. Like, should we rely on the market? Should we rely on private companies who at the end of the day want to make a buck, to like do this? And should that expense, when we know that our future as a species is dependent on it, should that expense just fall on individuals? How much of this should be literally like taken over by local government, and like figuring that into our budget moving forward? Because if this is going to be a sustainable thing, it's going to be hard. Like, when people, because again, we have the other issue of wages. People don't make a lot of money on average, and to decide that my energy bill is going to be $400 until the solar is paid off. Like, who can afford that if you have a family of family with 3 children, 4 children, etc. So I just feel that a lot of this, when we're thinking about it, we can't use traditional models of just how to educate people and find the best business who's selling the product. I think there's going to have to be a socialized state solution to this if we want to make sure that it's equitably distributed. Income isn't a barrier. Location isn't a barrier. If you have too many trees, you're not going to like say, well, no, I can't do this because there are too many trees and I can't benefit from it. So I just think there are those different issues that I identified, should be considerations.
Right.
So,
And that covered a lot of different things. And definitely other people have, I think there was a chat, what are the plans, different financing based on income? So there are other concerns similar to yours. And I just want to remind people, because we've started talking about co-ops a little bit, but we're talking about residential and, the type, specifically residential, because there's other, there's other ways that solar is installed and so let's think about residential. And Deb, can you talk about the National Soul Smart program and how this maybe factors into some of the questions and concerns, like certification and technical assistance provided by that?
So I think the Department of Energy is likely to have increasing numbers of opportunities and funding to support local governments. Soul Smart right now is the program that's in place that local governments can access free technical assistance. A lot of that is about looking at your permitting process. I saw a question earlier about has the permitting process been streamlined? And so that's something that through the Soul Smart program, you can get assistance to help look at that process, make sure that it is streamlined, and as well as other kind of get measured against other best practices. It is a designation program at the end of the day. The community would get designated. There's kind of levels in terms of silver, gold, and bronze, or bronze, silver, gold. But yeah, I mean, that is just the federal program that is in place right now. I think continuing to watch what comes out of the federal government and opportunities to get even more assistance is going to be kind of a top action in that list of steps, because we do anticipate there will be more resources coming down the pike.
Good. Okay, so that's one of the steps is that National Soul Smart program. And so I want to come back to the educational part. And David, I'm sorry, I saw you had your hand up too. And if I'm missing somebody. Oh, and Daniel has his hand up. Let's go with Daniel first, and then David, I'll come back to you. Okay. Hey, Daniel.
Hello. I literally left a meeting in my living room with a solar representative to come to this tonight. So I am on the front lines of the solar revolution today. I think, one of my hesitancies, just to echo what Lisa was saying, was it feels like a high pressure sale. I think a lot of businesses and dealerships for manufacturers are pushing the incentives as a way to basically discount the cost of it, but they're not really clear on what the source of those or the longevity of those that assistance is there for. It just kind of shows up as a magic number, and I think it is, as a consumer product being sold, it's right up there with used cars, and I think there is the two twin impulses of wanting to save money and also kind of making green energy at home. I think the idea of paying a utility company to deliver green energy to us, like David was saying, coming in from wind power, there is an extra transmission cost to that may make it less cost effective for the individual consumer to participate in that. But and I was telling the representative, it's kind of like it's like a cooking analogy. Like, you can make the green energy at home, or you can order it from a restaurant. But if you get it from a restaurant, you got to tip. You got to give a little bit more. But you need to buy all your pots and pans. You need to get the stove, and you need to get all those things to be able to. And it does feel like a big leap of faith for an individual homeowner to make. And at the same time I was researching this for ourselves, I was learning more about the solar co-ops and programs that would allow us to use solar energy or even purchase panels within a collective that are not physically on our property. And I think that's a very interesting development. Our house has the exposure and the roof space to make it feasible, at least for half of our energy. But I think if our house was 45 degrees, we would have no opportunity to do that. And I think having alternatives, for being able to speak to the alternatives for putting individual panels on individual roofs is an important part of, I want to participate in this, but I either can't financially, I can't because I don't own the property, or simply my property doesn't qualify for it. And I think that can be very potentially frustrating too to people who want to do well by the green energy impulse, but can't participate in the way they might like to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. And we that was brought up at one of the last groups as well. If you're in an apartment building, and that's part of understanding, like, what is available and how is the energy generated in the county. So that's another component of the whole picture, right? So thank you so much. That was really informative, and that does hit on, again, like, what's going into your purchasing decisions, and do you know what solar companies are reliable? We're hearing that. No, that's a hole for homeowners. Okay, let's go to David, and then I saw Mary Sue, and then okay, so and then Adeo. I apologize if I didn't pronounce that right. But David.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to take much more time, but something that Lisa mentioned, I think, is actually really critically important. If we're doing a lot of solar, let's say off roofs, even though I think the discussion tonight is really more about rooftop solar. But if we were to do it, say, for instance, out in a area where we've got a forest or something, we start cutting down trees, we're kind of going against what we're really trying to do. I think one of the really nice things about this done in these right-of-ways, utility right-of-ways, is the fact that these are kept clear of trees. So we don't really have to worry about deforesting, yet we still can put a lot of solar out there.
Yeah. Thank you. We want to talk about less land-based applications, solar farms, and more of how do we get these individuals. So Mary Sue?
Okay, so I've got three things for you. The first, there was Deborah, Perry, you were talking about the national program that referenced permitting, streamlining permitting. Anybody who's tried to get a permit in PG County knows that there's a hurdle there, that permit department needs some attention to be more streamlined. That I would definitely want to have be considered by this action group. The other one would be just from what everybody's saying on this call in this breakout room is having a vetted list of companies who have a long-term commitment to what they install, period. Right? If top 3 companies and they have to compete for it, and they need to stick to their commitments to the people and also to commercial. I'm here for commercial property, and I'm interested actually in combining solar and a green roof because I understand that the green roof helps cool the roof for the panels. If we're looking at heat as being a major issue in the next set of decades coming our way, we need to be thinking about these solar panels being able to resist major heat. So I'm just going to put that into the equation here, and I appreciate this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, could I speak one more time? I think it's just important, this is Vernon again. I think it's important after listening to what everybody was saying and everything, I think it's important to recognize the actual environmental injustice that was done within the solar panel industry on Prince George's County. You go ahead. I'm sorry. Were you looking to say something? Yeah.
I was going to say, I want to come back to that. Okay. I want to acknowledge a Dadio.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut across.
Yeah, because we have a hand up. We definitely want to address and understand equity issues as well, specifically for solar and the idea of how, if we talk, we have about 10 minutes remaining, and I do want to get to the financing part and experiences with financing and understanding the different types of financing. Do people understand the our pace potentially coming in? But Adeo, can you?
Yeah, this plays into that question exactly. Okay, all right, so yeah. it leads you right into your question.
Right. Hold on one second, Vernon, and right, we'll come back to that. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Adeo. You gotta unmute. Can you get unmuted? You can't. Oh no. Okay, because I was going to say if you can put it in the chat too, what your thoughts are.
You want to get the question out while you're waiting for that?
I think so. And Adeo, if you could put in the chat when you're ready to talk or when you think you can unmute, that would be great. And I hope you can resolve your mute issues. Enter the waiting room. Okay. Oh, okay. I think I think he might be leaving this room potentially. Okay. So Vernon, yeah. So we do want, with the last, we have 8 minutes, expand participation in solar financing. So let's go back to what you were talking about with the inequities.
Which
oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. I'm logging in through my phone, but yeah, my topic is gonna around the same with Vernon in regards to like the equity aspect of it. So I was just like curious to know if there were like any like state or local programs that are like exemplars of like some of the equitable approaches that maybe commercial or government programs entities are doing, making sure that like solar panels are installed in communities that are more heavily impacted by the climate change and some of the environmental injustices that we talk about, particularly in like South PG County. So just interested to know if there's any like equity programs going on. There may not be any like state or local ones, but are there any incentives that commercial institutions have to really like build up those communities that have been impacted by climate change the most?
Good, thank you. I'm glad we got to hear your comments and questions. Henry, I see your hand up, and Vernon, I want to come back and have you expand on what you wanted to expand on. But Henry, did you have something on financing or experiences with finance?
Well, I'm sorry, I missed the first part of this, but
Okay.
yes, it involves financing. I just want to point out that there are other technologies that could be financed other than roofs, panels on roofs. I was up in Vermont where a lot of homes are putting up these large tracking units, which rotate both in the vertical direction and in the horizontal direction to align perfectly with the sun. And these things are super efficient and produce a great deal of energy. So part of the finance issue should be to broaden sort of what we're talking about here a bit.
Yeah, the technology piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if it's a little out of order, but
No, thank you. No, that's good. And Stacy, I apologize. I hope your hand hasn't been up. I'm trying to catch them as they come up. But yeah, I apologize, Stacy.
I just wanted to get back to Adedeo's comment around financing and related to the Justice 40 funds that are designated for communities most impacted, and how within the county we can direct those funds to support LMI or low to moderate income communities and community solar. So I think that should absolutely be a part of the agenda that we put in the action plan.
Great. Okay. And Vernon, are we covering kind of what you tipped off?
The panel and the participants have been great. I'm telling you, everybody's input is just right on track. And I just wanted to kind of bring it home as well. I can't go without making a statement about the oversized sun, what do you call these panels? I'm having an old folks moment.
Photovoltaic cells.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't get it out either.
I'm just, I can't go without saying, somebody has to say, really, definitely make a comment in reference to the way the industry oversized so many residents' homes for profit, when it was supposed to be for, the value, the efficiency and the value. And I hope that we don't allow that to happen again. I think that was a travesty.
I don't understand what he means by oversized. What do you mean by oversized, Vernon?
Some of the panels that were on people's roofs. Do you see some of the panels that are on people's roofs? They have their entire roof covered with panels.
That's because they chose that for their home, Vernon.
No, I agree. But when you're talking in front of a salesman who's selling you a product that he's trying to get the highest commission he can get.
You can't overproduce or intentionally put an overproducing roof on a system unless you are purchasing your system, and even then there are limits with the utility on that. So people's systems are not quote unquote oversized. They are specifically, that's why education is so important, and we've got to talk about how we can educate the community, because they are specifically designed to meet your demand for electricity. I used to sell solar for Tesla for 3 years, so I'm really familiar with this. So Vernon, people aren't oversizing systems intentionally to make a buck, because if they was, I would have done it. No.
There's an actual lawsuit against Sun, what was it, Sun System? So I can pull the data for you. So I speak of knowledge. So you sold, but the back end is another thing. So we can debate, but it's a topic for discussion.
And
Well,
they're
we
really,
should discuss it to
yeah.
make so that people are clear and not, because there's a lot of misinformation. I put this in the chat, and disinformation. So that's why this education is so important. So there really has to be a portal or process where people can go and get what they believe to be unbiased information around an actual solar installation on their home.
Yeah, and I have heard that before, that there's these inequities, and we have to address it through financing and education. We have 2 more minutes. Henry, I see your hand up, and I want to make sure we close with some coalescing thoughts, like what are the most important things for this particular action. But
okay, I'll just mute myself. And
okay, so you still have your hand up. I didn't know if you wanted to talk again. Stacey?
I just wanted to say that, like Solar City, now Tesla, we have it on our roof. We have a lot of our roof covered. And the way it works is, in the summertime, we generate more solar energy than we need, and it goes to the grid. And in the wintertime, it's the opposite. So it's not overextended or oversold or anything. We get a break because the Tesla stuff is cheaper to us than Pepco. So
The process he's referring to is net metering, and some people actually get a check back, for their true up period for if they produce more utility than they actually use. I did want to make a comment on something that I heard at the top. Oh my God, 117 seconds. Is that Prince George's County is leading in terms of the installation of solar. What doesn't jive with that number is the minority community is not participating at the same level as the general community. So there are some issues that must be addressed around why it is the BIPOC community is not participating at pace with the rest of the county. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stacey. Anyone else? Some closing thoughts for either participation or takeaways? This was great. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know who I should speak with, but I am not only an owner of a solar services business, but I also am the Environmental and Climate Justice Chair for the NAACP, and I would love to participate in organizing any activities that we have around solar education and awareness, because it really is one of the ways that we can really make a difference as far as climate change is concerned.
I was going to ask, if you're already involved in this process, and Deb, I'm sure you can help Stacey get a little more ingrained into this, because your knowledge is really welcome. And everyone's comments, and hopefully those listening, got what they were thinking out of this group, and just to understand that this is a long process. These are parts of whole. And I think it's really nice to think about what we can individually do, which is part of what solar panels are about. So we can leave the breakout room, or if anybody wants to talk for 27 seconds. Thank everybody for their participation.